Hey, everybody. It is good to see you all. My name is Jay English. I'm the founder and, let's be honest, co-founder of Plain English, because my wife is on this screen and I need all the points I can get. So I want to say welcome to everybody that's tuning in. For those that may even watch this stream later on, I want to welcome you as well. We are hooking back up with the lead team of Kneel for Nine. We've got a special guest who may have done more work than all of the Kneel for Nine people combined. And I am so excited to have all of these incredible people here with me tonight. About a year ago, and a lot of people don't even realize where this came from or how it started. About a year ago, there was the death of George Floyd, and it broke me in a way that I am still probably trying to recover from. I went live and really just poured out my heart for, I think, an hour and 20 minutes. I didn't even realize an hour had went by, because I was like, I'm either going to tear up all of Milwaukee or I'm going to talk to anybody and everybody that'll listen, and I chose the latter. We did that video, got a lot of feedback, a lot of crazy stuff happened. And my wife came up with this incredible idea of like, hey, we have to do something. What about kneeling? Kneeling could be something that could be universal. It could, bring people together. People could pray, they could meditate, they could go live, they could do a million different things. And kneeling already was a flashpoint in a lot of areas. Obviously, there was Colin Kaepernick. There was how George Floyd died. And we felt like kneeling was the right thing to represent on that side. And then as a Christian and as a believer, kneeling represents prayer for many times for many of us. And we were like, this could be something that people all over could do. So we hooked up with two people, and I want to say a big shout out and a thank you to Miss Marquesa Tucker and to Reggie Moore, who were godsends. We have never done anything like this before. I called Marquesa like, hey, I got this idea and I do not know how to organize anything like this. And she hit me back like, hey, I'm happy to help you out. Matter of fact, let me get the director of the Office of Violence Prevention on the line as well. And we did a three-way call, hopped on Zoom, and they laid it out. Reggie Moore, props to you. 2 minutes into the phone call, I'm talking about kneeling, and he was like, kneel for nine. That makes sense for me. Just go with kneel for nine. You need something catchy. We launched that thing in 24 hours. It went from concept to name to a Facebook page to, we literally started off by just making a flyer on Canva and shooting out some text messages, some of which went to some of these people that are on this call right now. We were hoping, like Sonya and I were hoping for like 500 people. Like if we get 500 people nationwide, we did something. There was 700 people at one location in Kenosha, and we started shooting messages out and started getting responses back, and the responses became overwhelming. It was shared like hundreds of times. Messages were pouring in. We actually had to form a team just to keep up with what was going on. We ended up with something like 50 or 60 different locations across the nation. Some of the locations was literally one person alone in a field kneeling for 9 minutes. And there are places like out in Boston where it was like 1,300 people showed up at certain locations. It blew our minds, and the friends and the camaraderie and the overall mission of letting the world know that we all stand together and that was wrong. And something has to be done. We looked at Kneel for Nine and saw that as an opportunity for police accountability. We love our law enforcement, but just like any job, if you got bad apples, they got to go. They have to be held accountable. Something has to be done. I don't care what you go do, whether that's your dentist, whether that's your mechanic. I don't care if it's your caddy. If they're not doing their job correctly, something has to be done. Something has to be changed. And that was one of our primary focuses. Focus number two was, how do we bring collectively people together, not just African Americans, but our white brothers and sisters? How do we engage them in this? How do we do this together? We didn't get here by ourselves. We're not going to solve this by ourselves. And then the third thing was really diving into Black history, specifically the history that most of us have never been told or taught in our education systems. The history that would actually help us all better understand why things are the way they are and why we're dealing with the issues that we have. So I am pleased and so excited, because I feel like I haven't seen some of these people in too long, but I want to take a moment and let them introduce themselves. I'm gonna go ahead and let the lady in blue take it from here. You go ahead and jump on in.
Hi, everybody. My name is Laura, and I am a director of a healthcare facility in Racine, Wisconsin. I've been there for 8 years. Sonia and I went to high school together, and we got to reconnect over Kneel for Nine. I have a passion, one, to amplify Black voices because they have been stifled for too long. And so if we can help bring stories to life from people's experiences, I think that that's a really powerful thing to do. And I'm here really to walk alongside Jay and Sonia in their ministry. I love organization, so I get to help with that kind of stuff. But I'm just here to serve and hopefully help win the fight over white supremacy in our area, because it's in our educational system, our banking system, businesses. It's in every level. And so we need change.
Come on. All right. I see a man in the black. Come on.
Hi, I'm Dave. I'm a co-lead pastor at Vineyard Milwaukee Church here in Milwaukee. And I'm also a street case manager where I work with the homeless, working on housing navigation from the street to apartment in a housing first model. And so I'm out in the street all the time, every day, and also pastor a church that's really passionate about the people who are on the fringe. And I got involved with this because I'm friends with Jay. And when all this hit, I, like a good friend, called Jay and said, hey, like, take your mask off with me. Like, I want to have that kind of relationship where you don't have to put on your mask. You don't have to hide your feelings, your emotions. Like, I'm here for you no matter what. And it started with that, and it's moved into Kneel for Nine, and it's moved into our church, and it's reshaped who we are. It's reshaped our faith. It's reshaped our picture of Jesus and what he's called us to, what kind of community he's called us to be. And so it's been a hard journey, but this group has been awesome. We've had a lot of fun getting together and being open and honest and silly, and we have fumbled through things and laughed through things, but in all of it, it's just been really rich, this experience.
Come on. Yep. Me and Dave, we stay in trouble. And that's my brother from another mother for real right there.
For real.
Dave, I fight people for you, bro. I just want you to know. I need to make a trip.
Same. You just tell me when and where. I don't need to know who or why. Jay says go, I'm there. I just need to know who's driving.
Hey, come on. Now, we have a lady on here who took kneeling to a whole different perspective, who has been part of a group that has been kneeling for almost a full year every day at 5:30 p.m. So I want you to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm excited to kick it with all of you. I've been on the other side of the screen laughing with you, but now you get to hear me. You might be sorry. I am Diana Schmidt. I live in Milwaukee. I have for the last 20 years. I work at Outpost Natural Foods Co-op and Brandon Store Development. I love our city, but I've always been really just befuddled at I wasn't using the word systemic racism a year ago today, but I've always been really struck by policies that really oppress. I met all of these wonderful people through Kneel for Nine. What brought us together in, I guess, intense sorrow and just a need to do something has really turned into a communal experience. And I sincerely pray to God to thank him for the sacrifice that of George Floyd, to bring so many people together to look through one lens finally, and to give us the words and to give us a way to talk to one another. From Kneel for Nine, Milwaukee Artists for Racial Justice was co-founded by me and some other kneelers and some other people in the People's Revolution. Our artwork is behind us over here, but that evolved from kneeling and meeting people on the street. So I'm grateful for your vision, and I'm grateful for the community that it's helped me build for myself and my family.
Come on. You know, you honorary family.
You are, absolutely.
But not least, definitely not least at all.
Best
I
for
want
last.
to bring on this other pretty lady here. Come on. Tell them a little bit about who you are and that we're married. Go ahead and tell them.
Well, if they can't already tell by the last names that match, my name is Sonia English. I am co-founder of Kneel for Nine and Plain English alongside my amazing husband, Jay. You know, as he was explaining earlier with the history of how we started and where we started in the basement just with some ideas and asking ourselves, what can we do to make a difference? How can we help bring attention to this, but not just bring attention, but as an outlet? I think that a lot of us were looking for some way to express ourselves, our distress, frustrations, but do it in a productive way. And this was a way that we felt that across the board, no matter where you stood on the issues, that, you know, as long as you agreed this was something that we needed to come together for, that this was something that we could do. So to see all of the fruit that has stemmed from, you know, just a small step of obedience and faith, to see all that has come, and here we are a year later, you know, looking back and reflecting on not just what has happened through Kneel for Nine, but just as a country, what has been happening. So looking forward to talking about all the topics that we have on the docket.
Yeah.
Come on. Well, I just want to say thank you again to all of you for being here. I love every last one of you, and it is a deep love because of what we've experienced, because of the conversations we've had, because we've done some things that I can't say any of us would have thought we would have done, you know, a year, 2 years ago. I cannot express how much I care about you all and what I feel towards you. Please know that. If you need us at all for any reason, phone call away. You already know. We'll hop in the car. We'll have Naomi in the back seat. Let's go. But what we want to do, we want to go ahead and jump into our first segment. And I want to start off by showing a video here. We know that the verdict came down for Derek Chauvin, and I want to show that verdict being delivered and the response from the Floyd family, who happened to be watching alongside this. So take a look at this video.
State of Minnesota, County of Hennepin, District Court, 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota plaintiff versus Derek Michael Chauvin, defendant. Verdict, count 1. Court file number 27, CR 20-12646. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:44 p.m. Signed, juror foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Signed by jury foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m.
I want to start out by asking you all, what were your immediate thoughts? You know, I'm not sure if you were watching this or if you saw it later on. I know I was watching, like, when it was happening. I was stuck at the TV because I'll be honest with you, I was still fearful that he was gonna get off. There was still a large part of me that was like, don't get your hopes up. All this work that we've done for this whole past year, all the marching, all the protesting, all of the different things that happened, like, people don't realize there were over 10,000 marches from June through just the end of August because of this stuff. I still was not convinced he was going to be convicted, especially not of all 3 counts. What were your thoughts? You know, anybody, what were your thoughts when you heard this?
I caught myself holding my breath. and the weight of that struck me. Just for the 30 seconds that I held my breath waiting for it, and then thinking, I can't breathe. And then hearing the verdict and knowing that everyone around the country could not believe it. You could look at Chauvin's face. He couldn't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
That's sad. We, without a shadow of a doubt, he was murdered. And I can't believe that we couldn't believe it. And that we look at his family, look at George Floyd's family. They were all holding their breath. They were all holding each other. They couldn't believe it. And that to me is the root of sad.
Yeah.
It did feel like a massive exhale.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it felt like a country literally just exhaled and had been holding, that's exactly it, holding their breath for so long. And I just felt like people, I felt like there were people in my circles that had been holding their breath for a really long time, and felt like for the first time they could exhale and see justice. It was a powerful moment.
After the exhale, I thought of Breonna Taylor, and that made me cry because she hasn't seen justice yet. And I know there's a difference between Minnesota law and she's from Louisville, and so it's just hard knowing how many people haven't gotten justice. I'm so grateful that George Floyd has, but it just breaks my heart that there's so many more out there that need
Thousands
that need accountability, and that hasn't happened.
Yes.
That didn't happen in Kenosha.
Mm-hmm. Personally, I definitely felt the exhale. It was like that weight was lifted off, but just as quick as that happened, it went to, I don't know what the sentencing is going to be. Is that going to be another aspect of justice or another reason why we look and get frustrated all over again? So it seemed like a temporary moment of a solution, a very temporary one, because not knowing what was going to come next.
Yeah.
So that was kind of where I was at with it.
And we should just trust the justice system. I mean, we should. And every word that you're saying, Sonia, just underlines our lack of faith.
Mm-hmm.
Completely.
Because of systemic racism.
Yeah.
We've seen it too many times. I mean, Laura brought up Breonna Taylor. I'm still confused about how the officers are being held accountable for the bullets that went through the wall into the other apartment.
Stop.
I know.
That's what the charges are. But the fact that they came to the wrong house, the fact that the person they were looking for was already in custody, none of that, and I understand the reasoning behind qualified immunity, but come on. Like certain stuff, I can't accidentally kill people. You know what I'm saying? Like I can't have an accident and accidentally kill people and then go home with no repercussions for that. Like, hey, you know what? The fact that they filled out the report and didn't even mention the fact that she got shot and killed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm with you, Laura, and I think that day, the Derek Chauvin thing, it was like we have to get this right. That's really what I'm saying. If we don't get this right, if they thought there were problems before, that would have nationally taken away all hope. And I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
Yep.
It would have been eliminated, and hope taken away from people, and you leave them with nothing.
That's it.
That's dangerous.
Yes, it is.
So that exhale, I felt like it was an exhale out of fear and angst, and it was an inhale of woo.
It's not the moon we're asking for here. Accountability is not the moon.
No.
We all saw this with our eyes.
Yes, I agree. They made him watch the video in the courtroom, and the fact that there were still people questioning, it's just amazing to me.
Don't you wonder? I haven't heard anything from him. Like, was he questioning when he saw that with his eyes? Did he see what we saw?
I don't know how he does not.
Lord,
You know,
heal his heart if he doesn't. Lord, heal his heart if he does not.
Whew. So yeah, that was the overarching thought, you know. So we had that whole thing, but then like 2 days later, it was almost like I can't explain it. There was like literally 4 or 5 shootings that happened like rapid fire right after the verdict over the next week and a half.
Yeah.
Though the one that really shook me, and all of them did, you know, there was a 13-year-old that was shot and killed who actually did what the officer said. Hey, put down the gun, show me your hands. The kid did that and got shot. There was the young girl that got shot and killed. There was the one that really messed me up was the gentleman who got shot, who was on the phone with the dispatcher. He came home, got into an argument with his brother, knew he was about to do something crazy. He called the police and said, y'all need to get somebody over here before I do something crazy. They sent an officer. He went outside, still on the phone with the dispatch, waiting on the officer to arrive. And the officer pulled up, got out the car, yelled at him to put the gun down, show me your hands, and then shot and killed him.
Say that again, because 2 of the 3 people that you just mentioned called 911.
Yes.
2 of the 3 people.
Yep.
Yes. So the gentleman who first called the police was literally on the phone with the dispatcher, waiting on the officer to arrive. You had, was it the brother, the inside the house that called too? Like, the whole thing was crazy. The guy literally had pulled, and he had a home phone that was one of the wireless phones. Cordless. It was an old cordless phone. And anybody that knows, back in the day, you had the cordless phones, and they was like this big, okay? He had it to his own head. This still confused me. He got the gun to his own head. Why did you shoot him? I'm still confused.
Yeah.
But this gentleman lost his life for literally calling the police and asking for help, because the assumption, unfortunately, not for everybody, but for a lot of people, they see an African American and there is a subconscious something that causes people to react much more in fear than if they saw someone else doing the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I don't say that as a racist statement. I've had people try to bring that up. This has been scientifically proven through multiple studies, through subconscious dive-ins by corporations, by the police department, by other independent people who have studied this phenomenon, where for whatever reason, African Americans are perceived as a larger threat, a stronger threat, more frightening, more intimidating, and more likely to need lethal force to be stopped. That's been proven. And the crazy part is not just for white people. This is all cultures that view African Americans in this light, including African Americans. Got news for you, including other black people. So we've been conditioned,
Right.
through a number of things, to view African Americans as more dangerous. And unfortunately, that is playing out more often. And we're getting to see it because of cell phone cameras that are capturing these things. It's mind blowing. Did you all see the report that came out about the video that had been hidden for 2 years about the gentleman that was killed after leading the police on a high-speed chase? That they said died. The report says this gentleman ran into a tree and died in the accident. That was the report. That's what all the officers signed off on. However, 2 years later, the video comes out. The brother didn't die in an accident. He led his police on a high-speed chase. Yes, he did run off the road and hit something, but he was completely fine when they came up to the car. He held his hands up. He apologized. He said, I'm scared. I'm fearing for my life. Like, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. They tased him in the car multiple times. They pulled him out of the vehicle, beat him down. And it was like 6 officers there, beat him down till he was unconscious, cuffed him, dragged him on his face on the pavement as he was cuffed. He lost consciousness and ended up dying en route to the hospital.
Jay, do you remember what this man's name was?
Oh, you know what? You're going to make me pull it up.
I feel like we collectively just need to say his name.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's worth the 30 seconds.
Yep, I'm pulling it up right now.
Wow.
Just unbelievable.
Yeah. And even I believe one of the police officers was recorded as saying, you know, we beat him to death. You know, expletives, stuff thrown in there.
Yes, his name was Ronald Green.
Ronald Green.
Ronald Green.
And this was the Louisiana State Police Department released the body cam footage. That
was 2 years ago, right?
Yes, because the lead officer said there was no body cam footage. Yes, this is again, to Diana's point, like, we should be able to trust our justice system. But when things like this happen and people are dying behind it,
yeah,
it makes it really hard to trust. And then you realize that not only was the body cam footage, it's been somewhere. So who's been covering that up?
Right.
So now it's being released. And people are seeing that this gentleman actually didn't die the way he said. So now the doctor report comes out from the ER. They told the doctor he died en route or died at the accident, but the doctor's like, I found taser prongs in his back.
Yeah. Cause of death didn't line up, he said. It didn't.
Oh, his poor family.
2 years later, this is coming out. So these are the things that we're fighting against. Again, I love police officers that are doing their job properly, but those that are not deserve to be prosecuted at the fullest extent of the law. I think they deserve to be prosecuted even at a higher standard because of their role and their responsibility.
Well, they're an extension of the state. They're an extension of the power of our government.
100%.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was even thankful to see the officers that testified in the George Floyd trial stand and literally said this was not what we train our officers to do. This was police brutality. This went beyond what was recommended. He was handcuffed. He was under control. This should not have happened. Like the fact that they even came out and spoke that, I wasn't sure that was going to happen.
Right.
I had to wonder if that gave courage to officers in Milwaukee who the John Doe trial that I don't know if you're following, Jay Anderson Jr., who was murdered by Mensa, Officer Mensa in Wauwatosa 5 years ago.
Yes.
I had to wonder, those detectives that came forward and those former police officers and officers that came forward, were they inspired to speak up? Like the impact, the ripple impact of George Floyd's unintentional sacrifice.
Yeah.
Well, you all, I want to change gears a little bit. We're coming up on the 1 year anniversary of our first meal, which was June 2nd of 2020. Pandemic is raging. Everybody's telling us not to go outside. Don't be in large groups. Don't come together. And this became, I know for us, like, you know what, forget the pandemic, man, all of that. This is more important.
Amen.
This is more important. Like, if there's ever a reason to risk whatever is outside, this is a great reason. So I want to show some coverage of what happened that day. This is going to be from Milwaukee Channel 58. And then I want us to talk a little bit about what Kneel for 9 meant to you all and maybe some of the feedback you received and a little bit about, you know, are we in a better place now a year later? Or are we still, is it potentially worse? So let's have that conversation right after this video.
Protests aren't just happening here in the city. They were also happening in suburban areas near Milwaukee earlier today. In fact, a handful of Kneel for 9 events happened at 5:30. The 9 represents the minutes Officer Derek Chauvin's knee was on George Floyd's neck. Pamela Turner! Why are we so unwilling to talk about something that should just simply be talked about? In Brookfield, dozens of children and adults gathered at a park and ride facility to peacefully protest what happened to George Floyd. A majority of the protesters were white.
This is the most segregated city in the entire country, and it is within the white community that racism needs to be dissembled. So we're here.
Tears ran down the faces of people on their knees.
It was emotional, and I was tearing up. And my daughter got here late. She was on the other side. she's very emotional about this.
Milwaukee also held a number of Kneel for 9 events, including one in Humboldt Park. The message of the nationwide Kneel for 9 is to initiate change and police accountability, engage white supporters in churches, and emphasize Black history.
People that are going to be attending this, it's going to be for their very first time, and it's extremely important that it's not their last time.
I have to talk and have discussions with my children as they grow as to what's the right thing to do and what's the things that might get you into issues just by living your life.
Kenosha also garnered dozens of supporters. Protesters say the 9 minutes of kneeling felt like a struggle.
It's even hard to kneel for 9 minutes in a parking lot just of your own volition. I can't imagine having someone put pressure on my neck for 9 minutes.
Organizers say part of the Kneel for 9 message is to remind everyone we're created in God's image, no matter what the color of our skin is.
Lazy! Black Lives Matter to God. And so I know a number of churches that I've heard of throughout the community are doing this as well.
Every color is beautiful. Every color's culture is beautiful. And that when we say we're colorblind, what we're really doing is saying we don't see the struggles that you go through.
Happened here in the state of Wisconsin. Our neighboring states, Illinois and Minnesota, also had Kneel for 9 events. Reporting live in Milwaukee, Sharon Magenda, CBS 58 News.
So I don't know how it affects you, but like, I'm trying to keep some tears because it's that day, and I can speak for myself. That day was the most connected I've ever felt to a larger purpose outside of literally chasing people for salvation. As a pastor, that day was everything that I've ever wanted. Was every color, every nationality, every language. It was people from every background. It was people coming together that were total strangers. And people were on Facebook Live. It was all over the place. It was prestigious people. It was people with no prestige. It was titles. It was hospitals. It was everything. And I felt like if we can do anything to support the Floyd family, to show them this is what it looks like when people support you. And this is how many people support you. So to even see that report, I can't explain fully what that did for me personally, to be a part of that, to be able to stand in solidarity or kneel in solidarity with so many people that I may never meet, may never talk to, but we all looked at this something and we said, that's wrong. We all said we have to do something. There were children involved. There were parents teaching their kids. There were conversations. There was everything that I would want to see every day. I felt like for one day we saw that. And, I just want to hear a little bit from you all. What did Kneel for 9, specifically that day, June 2nd, what did that mean to you? How are you affected in being a part of that, and even now?
It was definitely on my heart to keep going. The meditative moment that I took with my neighborhood, I knew on my heart that couldn't be it. We had to keep going. The holding someone's sorrow on my heart is something that I don't take for granted. It's a privilege. It's an honor. And I couldn't stop holding. I couldn't stop holding the collective sorrow that everyone was feeling, and how that turned into hope and showing my neighborhood hope. People driving through my neighborhood in that day and beyond. The meditative part of it, it's a prayer. It's a 9-minute prayer for me.
Mm-hmm. I remember the one time I was in your neighborhood and I got a chance to join your neighborhood and that Kneel for 9. And there's something about, it was actually really beautiful to see all these people sort of trickle out of their homes and sort of congregate on this corner
Yeah.
And they just sort of come. I'm like, where are they all coming from? Like, it's just out of nowhere, you know, with signs and you know, they pair up and start, you know, chatting a little bit as you know, good friends or neighbors will do, and then all of a sudden you see everyone take a knee, and then there's something that happens when those cars go by and honk and shout a name and raise a fist, and it moves you to tears because you see,
Every day.
Yeah, you see
Really?
that like there are other people in this fight, and it's not just the people in that corner in your neighborhood, but it is those people in that corner in that neighborhood, and then there's even more. And it is a powerful moment in those 9 minutes on that corner that you live. I need to go back. It's been a while.
Dude, it's a sacred space to me.
I need to go back. It is a sacred space.
I mean, Jay, you said it, like there was something more important than the pandemic, and pandemic be damned, we were going to come together.
Yes.
And we are going to accept hugs. People have stopped in the intersection and jumped out of their car and hugged and cried with us. And I know that you all have seen that at other kneels nationally when we've done it together as a collective. It's just, there's this pull to connect. And I think I really honor what you have done with your vision to stitch people's hearts together, because sincerely, that's what Kneel for 9 does for 9 minutes a day and beyond.
Sorry, that's my dog.
Let's say hi.
He was giving an amen to that word, right?
Yeah, he was.
Right.
He was. Yeah.
Laura, what were your feelings and thoughts?
I was in the middle of a health crisis. So I was at Mayo Clinic, and me and my friend that was there with me, we kneeled in the middle of the Gonda building.
Oh.
I think people were probably like, what are they doing?
That's all right.
Because I had to go up for COVID testing before I had a procedure done. So that was that Tuesday we were up there for testing. So it was so powerful because I knew I was alone, because I wasn't with hundreds, thousands of people. It was me and my friend. But there was such a solidarity knowing that I'm with you in spirit. And that a quiet demonstration is just powerful. You know, it doesn't have to be a lot of people. Sometimes it's the small, quiet things that get people's attention. And so we got to talk to a few people after, explain what we were doing. And that was really cool, because I don't know if you haven't been to Mayo Clinic before, there are people from all over the world there. I mean, I'll have someone speaking Arabic next to me, someone speaking Chinese, Mandarin, across from me, and then I've got someone speaking Portuguese right next to me. So it's quite the melting pot. And so we got to talk to a few different people about it. And Rochester is not very far away from Minneapolis, so it was very, we were nervous driving there because of the police presence, because we had out-of-state tags, and so it was very heightened. But it was really special to be part of that, even if it was from far away. And then I got to talk to you guys, and I was in recovery, so I couldn't go to meals for a little while. But I love that we can all participate in different ways. It doesn't have to look one way, because we're inclusive. And so, if when I go through a time of disability, that doesn't mean that I'm not able to contribute something important, which is important.
Sincerely.
Now, something that I noticed that was not something we would have thought of beforehand. Mm-hmm. In the kneeling itself, when your leg starts hurting, when your knee starts aching, and you would think about how long someone was kneeling on a person and how uncomfortable that had to have been for the person kneeling.
Yes.
I had a moment, and I've seen so many people actually break down and start crying when we would get to like minute 4, minute 5, and they're like, how could you kneel on someone for this long? I'm in grass, and my knee is killing me. I'm hurting. this is not comfortable, and you stayed on top of a person.
Mm-hmm.
And then other people would think about how George Floyd must have felt with someone kneeling on him for that long.
Mm-hmm.
That was something I was not expecting.
No.
That sort of lesson for me in this whole thing. I was not expecting that realization that you had to do with absolute intentionality and purpose to kneel on someone. I got when you pitched it to me, the kneel for 9 thing, I was like, oh, I got the camaraderie. I saw all that. I was like, this is great. I didn't get until I actually kneeled for 9 minutes that powerful demonstration of what that man did and the intentionality and power behind it. I'm going to do this.
Mm-hmm. It speaks to the horror of it.
It does.
Yes.
It really does.
Our sweet elders of our neighborhood bring their garden paths.
Aww.
Like, they're still like, they're like, nope, it doesn't feel right in my body. Like, it shouldn't have felt right in his body.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, the kneeling in and of itself was powerful because of all the places it took you. And you don't think about how long a time 9 minutes is.
Yeah. Until
you're still, you're quiet. It's a meditative time, like speaking. There's no distractions. You're not on your phone. What seems like 10 minutes should go by, really quickly. But in that moment, that 9 minutes is a long time. And, you're looking around and you're seeing other people and you're realizing they're hurting just like you are physically hurting. And then you realize that even emotionally, as you see tears fall or as you see people, I agree with Dave, like the first day, that June 2nd, when we did that, the number of people that were honking and yelling out of windows, who were, stopping by, like joining in. One of the images that really broke me down. So a good friend of mine led a kneel in Waukegan, Illinois, and there were multiple police officers that joined in. He's an African-American pastor, and he was kneeling, and he had his boys on one side. He had a police officer on the other side, a white police officer. And he said in that moment kneeling, he looks and he's like, I'm here to be a bridge from my boys to this boys. That tore him apart. And afterwards, he said when they finally stood up, him and the officer hugged and just broke down. Because I think, honestly, there really is a large part of us that wants to connect. We want to be together. We desire to be on the same page. This became something where, the Bible says to mourn with those who mourn. I felt like collectively that's what this became.
Yeah.
It was an opportunity for us to mourn and to grieve collectively for our nation, absolutely for George Floyd, for injustice, for our kids who are growing up like this, for the people who lost their lives that have not received justice and that we don't even know their names because nothing was ever released on camera about it.
Yeah.
And it was so much emotion came together in that. Those are the things that I would cherish for the rest of my life. And even seeing others, I saw another lady that I believe was in, I think it was South Carolina or something. The riot police was out. The people were marching and they stopped and they kneeled. They were going to do their 9-minute kneel and they started really pushing and chanting for the police, kneel with us. And you saw in that video, it had to be 25, 30 officers standing in a line, riot shields, helmets, batons, and they kneeled. And what went from a tension-filled, ready to explode moment instantly changed. Because now for just a moment, we're all on the same page. This is not about us versus you. This is all of us acknowledging something's wrong here. And after the kneel was over, you saw this same crowd that the police were sent to disperse and get rid of. That same crowd stood up, walked to the officers, and began hugging them. Began shaking their hands.
This wasn't in your vision in the basement.
No.
You did not know that the bridge would be so fast and long and inclusive.
You know, and there's the end of the video. There's this black lady hugging this white police officer, and she's completely broken down on him. Like, she's just bawling. And I think that's collectively, that's really who we are as a people. That's what most of us are. Yeah. And what I've tried to convince people that would say otherwise, and that, you know, choose to focus on looting or choose to focus on any of a number of things that a small percentage of people are doing, that's not most of us.
Yeah.
That's not most of us. We're out here trying to see something change, trying to see something be different, not trying to attack the police, but trying to encourage our police to stand up for us against other officers who are a curse to that badge. So when you see people come together and are able to stand and say, we all agree this was wrong, it was just powerful, you know? So it's the desire in our basement was to see people come together.
Yeah.
We were angry. We were hurt by what happened. And at the same time, we were highly disappointed at the division. Churches like divided, families divided, friends divided, people polarized on one side and the other. Well, you got to wait for the information to come out. Well, but what about this and what about that? And it's like everybody went to their corners.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to figure out how can we do something that supersedes all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so to see what God did through a 5-minute idea, some text messages, and a Canva flyer.
That's beautiful.
Hey, I felt like, you know, here's my 5 fishes and my 2 loaves of bread.
Yes.
Man.
And Jesus was like, that's all I need.
Yeah.
Yeah. It did a really powerful thing in terms of causing some folks to look inward. I feel like throughout this whole process of as I engage with people with all kinds of points of view, some that I disagree with 100%, some that I agree with, you know, trying to be that bridge sort of person. I feel like what Kneel for 9 did was create an experience that gave people a choice to actually stop and pause and look inward and see the work that I have to do in myself.
Yeah.
To step in, because I think that's the big key when you start seeing the turning point in people. They have to stop and pause for a moment to look inward, or where are my blind spots? Where am I not seeing things? And I think for so long people have insulated themselves where they don't even want to look inside themselves. You know, they'll point at the riots, they'll point at this and that and the other thing. But no, actually, you need to stop and look at, like, where does it start with me? And having even that experience, or having talked to someone who's gone to a Kneel for 9 or whatever, it's created an engagement where people can either, it gives them an opportunity. I have a choice. I can look inward at me and look at some of my formational things that has formed who I am.
Yeah.
Or I can continue to be closed off to that.
Yeah.
But it created an experience, an opportunity, a small move with a huge impact, right? That, you know, in the whole thing, 9 minutes is really a small time in the scheme of things, but like it created this moment, this small move where I could stop and go, all right, whoa, I need to, before I go in all in these different directions, I need to start with me.
Yeah.
And then once some work is done there, then it's like, oh yeah, I'm stepping into this further. Like, I'm going to go deeper. This is transformative work, not only for me, but for my family, for my neighborhood, for my city.
Mm-hmm.
And it touches everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know that there's been over 100 cases of police brutality and deaths since George Floyd. But I also know there's been more reckoning within people, just what you were describing, Pastor Dave. And that, to answer your initial question, Jay, is what's better. There's that step, as Dave explained, that step towards reckoning, that step towards people speaking the same language finally and using the same words finally. Even if we're if we're opposing, we're still using the same words that I think we didn't have in our toolkit a year ago.
Yeah.
I hate to say that it's not better, but that is something that sincerely is better. I know I'm better.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. As I was working with some of my coworkers, I was asking, I'm a white guy. Like, you tell me, like, is it better, Jay? And so I was asking with some of my people of color that I work with. I'm like, hey, tell me, as I'm preparing for this Kneel for 9 little panel, I'm like, tell me what you think. Is it better? And they're like, oh, systematically? No, it's not. It's not better.
Yeah.
And they've all said the conversations about it are better.
Yeah.
There are more conversations that I'm happening where I feel like I have allies that I didn't have before.
Yeah. I've heard the same thing from friends. I think the hard part with the systematic part is there's still a large portion of the American population that denies it even exists and are actively fighting against it. And I see that also happening in the evangelical church, and that grieves me a lot. Because if you can't even recognize the problem, we can't fix it. And so, and what I just keep wondering is, why aren't you listening to the stories? Why aren't you looking at the data? You can look at banking data and see where there's discrimination. You can look at hiring statistics and see the discrimination. And so that is, what was that?
You'll get the receipts. We have all of the receipts.
Yes.
We saved them.
Yes. But it's disheartening to see people denying that.
Because then they have to look inward then.
Yes, they do. And realize you're part of the problem.
Yeah. And that means the church has to say, we're part of the problem.
Yes. And there's a lot of theologians that are not interested in having that conversation.
Yeah.
And that grieves me a lot. I think that's what grieves me the most, is because that's the opposite of who Jesus was.
Yeah.
And is.
Yeah. If I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking now, but I'm gonna keep going until Jay mutes me. Which wouldn't be the first time, I don't think.
Nobody else can mute you.
I don't think anyone else can mute me. I think Jay's the only one with the power. You talk about it's changed my church.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
I mean, it's changed my church. We've always been a church that has a heart and a passion for diversity, always, and we have always had a heart for those people who are on the fringe.
Yeah.
But first, it had to start with my wife and I. We co-pastor our church, and we're both white, and we both had to stop and pause and look at us and look inwardly.
Yes,
we are two white leaders. What are our blind spots? And bringing together the people of color in our church, saying, "Hey, we need a posture of learning. We need to know where we have missed it as a church. We need to know how to celebrate your ethnicity and culture and how you perceive things that we have never experienced because of who we are. And we need to know how to do better."
All my favorite leaders demonstrate fallibility. So now, Dave, you're rising to one of my favorite leaders.
Oh, you kind of
Dave, you'd moved on.
Well, I'll knock that down soon enough.
And you're funny.
But it's true. It's so important. It's like I have to, especially the church.
Yes.
And what I've seen is when I work on the street with folks, the church. I'm obviously I'm a big fan of the church, right? The church has done some great things. They've done some pretty bad things too, and they've hurt people, and in a lot of ways. And we can do better. I mean, we can stop, we can pause, we need to listen. So we need to listen as individuals and learn, but we also need to listen as institutions.
Yes.
As institutions, and have a posture of actually listening to people. Yes. And truly hearing, like actively listening, not just giving FaceTime, truly listening, and then bringing that inward to make those changes.
Yes.
And value those things. We need a better value system. We put all those things like, it's lower down the ladder. That's got to be top priority. Yeah. All right, I'll mute myself for a minute because my dog's barking.
I agree with you. It's like specifically within the church, and there's people that really feel that they have to fully understand and see it firsthand for them to have compassion. And I do not understand that at all. You don't have to walk in somebody's shoes to have compassion on them. Mm-mm. You don't have to experience what they've experienced to hear their story and to sympathize with whatever they're feeling.
You know, you're right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not part of the equation. Like, hey, if something happens to my sister right now, I didn't see it happen. I didn't see that car accident happen. So I'm not coming. I'm not responding to your text messages. I'm not giving you a phone call. I'm not showing up at the hospital because I didn't see it. And I don't even understand how you got into a car accident to begin with. That's how people are treating others.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Like, that's part of the issue is, no, if my brother or my sister says they're hurting, I don't need to understand all of it to recognize that I need to be a part of whatever it is that solution is that they need. I wish more people in the church felt that way. And I believe with all my heart, that's who Jesus was. That's who that's what he represented. And that's how I try to live my entire life. Is like, I don't need to fully understand. I don't need you to fully explain to me. If you're hurting, you're hurting. It don't matter if I even agree with why you're hurting. That is the reality. You're hurting. Mm-hmm. So I have to respond if I'm compassionate, if I'm sympathetic, if I claim to be a Christian, and I use claim strongly there. If I claim to really be a follower of Christ, I don't have to understand. To sit with you when you're hurting, to mourn with you, to plan with you, and to love on you, and to figure things out of how do we get out of this pit together. As opposed to, I'm going to just walk around the pit and look down at you and say, that's unfortunate that happened, but you should have made some different decisions.
Yeah, you named it.
Jesus didn't come to write a policy. He came to hang out with people.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
He came to hang out with people. He was about people.
Yeah.
It's always people.
I think what you're saying, Jay, it just speaks to how much of our culture is so self-centered, especially white America, because we haven't had to face the same challenges because of the color of our skin. And so we can't imagine that the America that we live in is the same. And that is before I was more aware of what was happening. That was so easy to think, oh, that can't be the same America. You guys are just, you're just making it bigger than it actually is. And because if then you have to face the fact it's happening, then you have to see your part in it. And that's where Dave was talking about looking at yourself, because then it requires self-reflection and going, oh, I'm an HR manager. I should probably look at how we're doing our hiring processes and how that affects, it trickles down into so many things. I'm a landlord. How does that affect who I pick for my tenant?
Yeah.
I'm
talking about the man in the mirror.
But really, and you know what? As Americans, we don't want to be reflective. No. There's a lot of people that do, but I see a lot of people, they're not interested in their part.
Yeah. I will definitely say white Wisconsin folks don't want to be reflective. I'm not originally from here.
Push it down.
Push it down. Right. We're going to stuff it way down.
Way down.
I mean, hold on. That's why my nephew gave me No secrets.
Oh, yeah.
I can't keep a secret if my life depended on it.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah. I used to until I got married, and then my wife, she just sees all through it. So I gave up. But
That's
it's true.
true to you, man. You know, it changes everything.
It does. It totally does.
You know, you can lie to guys, and we don't even think twice about it. We ain't even trying to be that much in your business anyway. Your wife,
but lying to yourself, America. Come on now.
Well, that is the biggest thing,
Where's lies?
Anna. Yes, we lie to ourselves all the time.
Well, in fairness, you work so hard on creating the false self that you want everyone to see.
Yes.
And that's the self you're like, oh, I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of this person that I've created that everyone else sees. And so that's the person I want to look at. And what's, you know, to bring this back to like what we're talking about is what I've had to deal with a little bit is some people who are, I believe, are Christians and followers of Jesus, but when we're engaging in these conversations, they're not seeing the injustice, they're not seeing the inequality, and it's because they have to stop and they have to actually now look at their true self, and they're not comfortable with it, so they've grabbed onto like bad theology. You know, probably the most common one I deal with a lot with white evangelical Christians is that I don't see color.
Right.
You know, that line all the time, right?
Oh, yeah. You stopped at every red light on the way here. Stop.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, and I was sitting there, I'm like, that was like a really, like in the 80s that sort of came out as this teaching of, hey, we've got the one line you can use, right? Cool. I don't see color. I'm not racist. So that was like, if I just say that line, everyone will back off and I don't have to see it, right?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And what happened? You know, people use that and they don't stop and go, oh, wait, no. When you have a person of color telling you to say, that is offensive to me, please stop saying that. And here's why. Yeah. And then they have to, that thing that I stuffed way down, you mean I got to look at that now?
Yes.
I don't want to do that.
Yes. You know what you don't typically see is people of color saying that we don't see color. You know, I'm yet to have a black man look at me and be like, hey, man, I don't see color nowhere. That has never happened to me. And you know, I had a that, you know, and she meant it. I understood where she was coming from.
Sure.
But she had been taught that was a good thing. Like, you know, isn't it a good thing if I don't see color? I said,
she didn't watch Sesame Street in the 70s and 80s then.
Come on.
Roosevelt Franklin was all about,
come on,
I'm black and I am beautiful.
Yes. Like, colors are amazing, and to look at me and say you don't see my color means you don't see my culture, you don't see my history, you don't see my struggle.
Your face? How about your face?
Come on,
you don't see my face? Right? Beautiful bald head of yours?
You missing all of this beautifulness right here?
You are missing out.
You love this one, Jay. I was talking to one guy, and he said he's a white guy, and he says, you know, there's this reverse racism going on.
Oh Lord!
And I'm like, what? Wait, tell me more about that. And
Jesus save him.
He goes, you know, you hear like we're like being prosecuted in the Middle East. And I looked at him and I go, where do you live? And he's like, I live in Wisconsin. I'm like, are you planning a trip? Are you planning a trip to the Middle East right now?
Yes.
He's like, no. And I'm like, shut up. Like you have to look at, like, if you can't figure out like what your community is doing and the struggles here, like that's the real stuff. That's the stuff you want to step into. Stop using like, oh, you know, all the way on the other side of the world, there's this thing going on and I'm mad about it. I'm like, no. Be mad about the stuff that's right in front of you. Right in front of you. You can go to a restaurant here. You can park your car wherever you want. You can buy a house anywhere you want in this city. But I have friends who can't. Yeah. You can apply and get an interview, you know, pretty much any job you want. But I have friends who can't.
Yes.
And it has nothing to do with anything but their skin color.
Yes.
I'm like, step into that. Don't tell me that you're prosecuted if you go to like Afghanistan, and like, come on.
Yeah, the fact that you have to go all the way to Afghanistan for you to feel that you're being oppressed is further proof we have a problem.
Yeah, but
Say that one more time, louder for people in the back.
Go all the way to Afghanistan for you to feel like I feel outside my home
every day.
But they might not let him in because he hasn't gotten vaccinated either. So like,
come on, man. Thank you, and Dave. I appreciate you because you be calling people out and giving them that petty face, which I always love about you.
I hope he's not watching.
If you are watching, just know that that's not a good conversation to have with people of color.
It's not. It's not.
You've been schooled.
Come on, because there's things that we navigate every single day that we still have to put up with, still got to go through. And here's the crazy part. After I just got through being profiled, after I just got through having somebody say a crazy racist comment, after I just got through having somebody not put money in my hands, even though my hand was right there and they dropped it on the table, I still got to go to work and outwork everybody else around me. I still got to show up
with a smile on your face.
With a smile on my face. I still got to go there and not be the angry black man. I still have to go there and not scare the white people.
Yeah.
Like, it's all this stuff that I still have to do while I'm carrying this big old thing on my back.
Yeah.
With people telling me that's not real, that didn't happen. Your experiences, that it could have been any reason why they singled you out.
Jay, I tell your story all the time that way, and I always start it with, I always talk about how tired you must be at the end of the day, and that people of color in our country, how exhausting their day is because of all that they have to think about.
Well, because of the trauma.
Because of trauma, because of systemic racism, because of what they're running into on a daily basis, how to act all the time, you know, and then survive the next day.
Right.
And the exhaustion you go through.
All the censorship that you have to do, the code switching, you can't even talk, use vernacular that you're comfortable with. You have to whitewash it.
Yeah.
Now, I see you over there nodding your head, and you've been quiet for too long because you talked me.
I'm sorry. I have been in and out of here due to the 4-year-old that is running around the house. So I kind of feel like I'm jumping in and out of conversations, trying to make sure that I'm keeping up. So,
hey, what's your thoughts so far?
I think, kind of even reversing back a little bit to, are we better off or are we not? I think that the optimist in me says that there are areas that we are better off now than we were a year ago. I think that, like some of you were saying, the attention that this has brought, the spotlight that this has brought, I have had many conversations with many people who say, I didn't even know. Like, I had no clue this was happening, this was going on. And I think with that has come some repentance, some self-reflection, and also bringing voice to those who are oppressed. I think that we have seen many who have joined the cause for justice, that have joined this. So, I mean, to me, that is the optimist side of me that says, I do think that in that aspect, we're better off. Are we any further along with the justice system? I know one of you guys mentioned that. No, I don't believe we are. I believe that maybe some more pressure has been put on people. And unfortunately, I feel that because of that pressure, that it's almost backlashed a little bit with the heightened, maybe nerves of those in law enforcement. That I'm not, again, I don't believe all police officers, I don't think any one of us in this room would say that law enforcement in and of itself is a bad thing or that they're all bad. None of us in this room would say that. But I think that it has brought some heightened maybe nerves for some people, that I think that some have gotten a little bit fast on the trigger because they are nervous with what the dynamic has been. So I think in some aspects we're better off, in some aspects maybe we're not as great off.
I think my heart softened to officers' trauma, because they have trauma every day. Yeah. When I read My Grandmother's Hands, Resma, what is his last name? Menachem, Resma Menachem, My Grandmother's Hands, talks about the trauma of white body supremacy. Like, why are you feeling sorry for white people? But it's not a feeling sorry. We all have our stuff to process. And I think we all have touched on this. Like, there is the collective breath that we all took when we heard the just to circle it back to the beginning, when we heard the verdict, we all have a lot to process together, and why not do it together?
Come on. Well, we have a couple of comments I want to read off here. I want to say thank you to Betsy. Betsy Raymond has been hanging in here with us, and I see Nicole Peterson.
That's my sister.
Yes, come on,
Betsy.
Love seeing what they're on here. Betsy was saying that she's listening, watching, and feeling this. She had some questions and wanted to make a statement here. She said, "You nailed it on the head with the I don't see color." I think this should be a deep dive with some of the conversations and even sermons going forward. I think there's opportunities to really recognize that. I was listening to a gentleman, he was really breaking it down biblically, even of Jewish supremacy in the Bible. When he brought it all the way full circle to this has been an issue for a long time.
Where are theologians at?
Everyone. Yes, talking about how the Jewish nation felt about pretty much anyone else who was not part of the Jewish nation, specifically from the Bible standpoint of looking at the Samaritans and looking at some of the others. He broke that down and really jumped into a lot of that. I think there's a lot of opportunities to educate and to talk and to teach from a secular standpoint as well as from a biblical standpoint. And then Nicole Peterson was saying, basically when we were speaking about how you got to live your life and be careful and watch out and look for your safety and also perform and produce, she said it's exhausting. It's tiring, agreeing with Dave's statement. And sometimes people don't understand how much you're carrying. Well, I never knew. How can I just come in here? I can't come in here to this job and just break down. I can't come in here on this job and be angry or, be throwing stuff or doing a number of the other things that I would love to do sometimes based on how I was just treated 15 minutes ago at a store or at a restaurant. You're not allowed to do that. You have to keep it together, and it becomes internalized. And to Diana's point, trauma is real. And the things that people have navigated and have experienced, those things don't leave. They don't go away. You carry them. They become a part of you. They become a part of who you are right now. And then we have to mask that so that we can still be successful, so that we can still operate, so we can still function and live a life in which you don't believe everybody's out to get you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think all of those things are
not knowing who's out to get you.
Yes, because you don't know. I was playing with one person. They were like, do you feel, going back to the all police officers thing, are you just fearful of all police? I said, no, here, let me help you understand the fear. The fear is I only have to cross one bad one. That's the fear. I only need one bad police officer to make J English a hashtag. That's the fear. It's not a fear of all police officers. It's the fear of the one. And I don't know who he is. I don't know where he is. I don't know if this guy pulling me over is him. I don't know if a no-knock warrant is going to be served on my home and it's the wrong house.
What's more scary than not knowing?
Yes.
It's the not knowing. It's going and getting up and getting dressed and thinking about where am I going today and what should I put on to be less likely to have an issue. It's thinking about vacations my wife and I want to go on as an interracial minority couple and making decisions of certain places we're not going.
Yeah.
Hey, this place was beautiful. And we look it up and we're like, yeah, but we can't go. Because I'd be paranoid every day, all day. Those are realities that people don't get and they don't understand. And it's hard to explain because you don't feel like reliving things to help people understand.
Right.
But to that point, we've always challenged people, if we're going to tell our stories, we need you to act after you get it. Don't just receive the story and be like, oh, well, thank you so much and go on about your life. No, that cost me something to tell you that.
Yeah.
But now I need it to cost you something. It's got to cost you in your actions. It's got to cost you in your thought process. I need you to make some changes because every time I relive that to help bring you forward, it costs me something.
Yeah.
And, those are our realities. Man, so you guys, look, I could stay on here all night long and hang with you. What I'm going to do is bring this to a close here. I want to say thank you again for everything that you all are. Laura, thank you for just being a real friend, for showing up out the blue and sending us a message like, I want to help. I won't end.
Everyone's ready to go.
Have two hands.
Come on, Dave. Thank you for always being a safe place, for always just being somebody that I could 100% be me with. I could vent. I could be angry. I could fuss. I could make fun of white people, and Dave would help me do it.
I would.
I thank you for that. Diana, you absolutely are family. What you and the rest of the group there is doing is amazing. But even the things that you've done and been a part of, for those that don't know, Diana is actually part of my board for Plain English. She has been an incredible connector, advisor, just a friend, a fighter. She is out doing stuff like, you know how you think you're doing something and I connected Diana with people and she's doing more than I'm doing in them circles now. It's amazing. To my wife, Sonya, thank you for believing in me. Thank you for being a sidekick and a partner and for coming up with ideas when I was just mad and ready to tear up stuff. My wife is the one that calms me down and says there's a better way of doing this. And most of the time I'm smart enough to listen. Every now and then I'm still working on it. Every now and then I still have some problems.
You're human. You're human.
Hey, Jesus is still working on me. But my wife is a blessing. So Sonya, thank you for
all of us
being on this journey. Man, she is amazing as a mother, as a friend, as a co-pastor, as a co-founder, just an amazing person. So what I want to do now as we're coming to a close, I want to celebrate basically 1 year of us collectively fighting together.
Yeah.
The fight is not ended. It definitely started long before we got involved, but I have to celebrate at least what part we've played in this. There's a video that I'm going to leave us with, and it is reflective of the kneel that happened in Round Lake Beach. My friend Armand Sheffrey preaching from a bullhorn under a bridge next to traffic. And a gentleman who came to be a part of the kneel, who happened to be a videographer, captured the entire thing. And we're going to close on that video. Pay attention to the message that he's portraying here, because this is what we're really all about. And then that's going to end with 2 minutes of silence and just showing some different photos of kneels from all across the nation. And we'll end there. So again, I want to say thank you to everybody that tuned in. Thank you to all of those that will watch this in the future. Feel free to share this, send this around, help people understand. Let's keep fighting. Let's keep loving as we fight. We can't become the problem that we're trying to eliminate.
Yes.
I'm going to repeat that again. We cannot become the problem that we're actually trying to eliminate. We have to fight, but we got to fight it in love.
Mm-hmm.
So I love you all. If you have questions, call over to us. We will be catching up with you all soon. Let's check out this video.
Thank you. Grab a water. We got some more up there. All right. Yeah. Oh, I got a whole bunch down here. Thank you. Yeah, have a good day, guys. Go grab the other one.
We picked this spot for the high visibility so that the world can see the church on display, love on display, what it looks like when people of God come together on display. And guess what? It's not a coincidence that we're on bridge, y'all. It's not a coincidence. You all are right now gathered under this bridge because you are saying, I want to stand up and be a bridge builder. But for those of y'all that are out here that would stand up and say, I am the church, you also come from a line of an even better bridge builder. His name is Jesus. Jesus of Nazareth was the ultimate bridge person. Knowing that our rebellion was separating us from God, he came down and decided to stand in the gap. He gave us a bridge back to our Father as we repent and turn away from our wicked ways and say, I trust you for my salvation. We have that opportunity to be one with the Father. That's what we're doing. We're building bridges.
So you all, I want to just say again, I love you. I appreciate you all. And I never would have imagined we'd be on this journey like this. We have friends for life. Know that. Know that. For anyone watching, this is what it's really about. It's about coming together. We got all type of different backgrounds just sitting here on this screen. From many different places. And at the end of the day, what's really important is what's on the inside of here. But it's also cherishing and valuing and celebrating the differences that exist as well. You can do both.
Yep.
You can do both. You can cherish the differences while loving people with completely unconditional love. You can do both.
Yep.
So we look forward to catching you all again soon. I'm gonna ask you all to stay on for a few minutes after we log off. And for everybody else watching, we will see you later.